Hi, goddesses. It's Ariana, and welcome back to another episode of Women Wednesdays, presented by Project Goddess. Today's episode is going to be a real treat for you all, and we're going to be discussing a topic that I've been meaning to cover for quite some time now. Earlier this month, I had the pleasure of presenting the workshop for Hyacinth's Tea Time in the Courtyard event in Newark. So this event took place in Newark Public Library's LGBT Center, and the event was designed as a celebration of the trans community and as an opportunity to really learn more about what makes us so unique. We had lots of good food there, including fresh tea, of course. We also had lots of giveaways. We had things like t-shirts, water bottles to store all that tea. We had home HIV testing kits, and we even had wigs, all for free for the community. It was truly an amazing event, filled with so many kind people and positive energy all around. Now, I know that some of y'all might not have been able to make it in person that day, so I did you all a favor and recorded my portion of the session. So the event was split into a workshop portion, which you're about to see, where we covered terminology relating to the trans community. And after that, we had a trivia portion, where we asked audience members some questions about HIV, LGBT culture, history, and if they answered right, then we gave away some of those giveaway items. Overall, everyone was able to leave happy with some new items, as well as some new knowledge. It was truly a terrific experience, which is why I am so happy to share it with you all today. As always, please feel free to comment or message with any questions that you might have. And please share this video if you think that someone could learn from it. We're going to be covering a lot of trans terminology today, so it might get a little complicated and you might need someone to help you through it. So I'm here to be that for you guys. And of course, please stick around till the end for our Goddess of the Day segment. Happy viewing, goddesses. All right, y'all, so hello. Welcome to our event, Tea Time in the Courtyard. So my name, as Nani mentioned, is Ariana Castillo. I am the statewide women's health educator for Hyacinth Foundation. So I'm not only based in Newark, I'm also based in Plainfield, Patterson, and Trenton. So kind of all over the state of New Jersey. And basically I offer women's health education services. So things like events in groups, we hold them in our offices and also in places like this who are kind enough to host us. We also do things like one-on-one counseling sessions with women. So if you have any questions about HIV or your status, like anything relating to sexual health, I can answer those questions for you and kind of just be a resource for the community when it comes to these topics, because I feel like there's not a lot of information that's really spread to the community. So I'm here to kind of be that resource for you all. So we have information and all of our flyers in the back. We also have condoms and lube as well, so feel free to grab them. So yeah, I just want to welcome y'all in.
Thank you.
So for those of y'all who are unaware of kind of like what this event is for, it's going to be very focused on the trans community. It's going to be basically educating about trans issues and also just having fun, because I feel like so much of what we hear like in the news nowadays is very negative. You know, obviously there's a lot going on, the energy can be very heavy. And so I want today to kind of be a celebration of trans people and just LGBT people as a whole, and like celebrating what makes our community very special and unique. So that's what I want to do today. I want to make it informative, but also make it fun.
All right, let's do it.
So Anna will be handing out some sheets of paper, and on those sheets of paper, there will be transgender terminology. So it's basically just a one-on-one of certain terms relating to the trans community, just so we all have, you know, the same baseline of knowledge. So we're just gonna go over them one by one and like talk about them and what they mean. And then after we go over these terms, as Unadi mentioned, we're gonna have a trivia portion. So I'm just going to be asking some general questions, you know, little trivia questions. They're going to be ranging from, you know, sexual health, HIV, to just pop culture and, you know, trans culture in general. So if you know the answer to these questions, You can raise your hand, I'll call on you, and if you get the answer right, we do have prizes in the back as well. So, pay attention. Answer the questions, we got it? All right, so, and also after we're finished, we will also have a Q&A portion. So if you have any questions about anything that comes up during the conversation, just feel free to hold on to those questions and we'll address them at the end. All right, so we can start. So if you look on your sheets, it should say at the top transgender terminology, and we can go over these terms one by one. So the first one, we're gonna start really simple, is transgender. So it is an adjective meaning a word that describes another word. So I just want to mention it's not a noun. So when you say a transgender, that's not correct grammar. So you would say a transgender person because you're describing the person. So the definition is an umbrella term for people who do not identify with the sex they were assigned at birth. So when you hear umbrella term, I just want to kind of break that down. So the reason it's an umbrella term is because there are many identities that fall within it. So just because you are transgender, that doesn't mean that you identify the same as someone else who is transgender. So there are many kind of identities that fall under that umbrella. And so when we say people who do not identify with the sex assigned at birth, that just means that, we'll actually cover that a little bit lower, but when you're born, the doctor looks at you and gives you an assignment at birth of either male or female. And if you grow up and realize, I don't like that, I don't like what was assigned to me, you can change it, and then you can identify as transgender. So let's actually skip down to assigned sex at birth, because I think these topics are kind of related. So assigned sex at birth. It's generally used to describe what sex was put on someone's birth certificate. So the reason I included this is because it is a preferred term instead of biologically male or female, or when you say born male or female. So these terms, when you say, they're biologically male, that can be kind of insensitive and not the correct terminology when we're describing trans people. So it's preferred if you are trying to speak about a specific experience, you can say that they were assigned a certain sex at birth. All right, so jumping back up, we have transgender man. So a transgender man is a transgender person who identifies as a man. So I wanted to include these because they're very general, right? So it's not just one kind of person that we're thinking about when we use these terms. These can be kind of for anyone. So as long as you identify as a man currently and you also identify as transgender, then you are a transgender man. And same for a transgender woman. A transgender person who identifies as a woman. And of course, these are binary terms, so once again, not everyone will identify solely with these terms. So what's important when we're discussing terminology is keep the people first, right? So don't just refer back to whatever's on the sheet of paper. You also want to respect the person that's in front of you. So whatever terms that they use to describe themselves, whatever terms they say that they want you to use for them, then that's what's really important in that situation, instead of just trying to fit, what's on the page.
Yeah. Okay, now first, before I say this question, don't nobody here shoot me, okay? I'm asking questions. Just say I'm asking questions. So I don't want anybody to be like, but anyway, so transgender man or transgender woman, does it matter, or and it's probably none of our business, but does it matter of how I'm trying to the right word. So if they haven't, had any reconstructive surgery or whatever, right? So they're still transgender.
Yeah, so that's actually, I'm so glad you mentioned that.
Okay.
So that's something that we'll talk about a little more in depth later on,
okay.
But I do want to address. So when we're talking about being transgender,
right.
It can be something that you identify as. So it may not have anything to do with, your body, your gender expression, because all those things are kind of different.
Okay.
But when we're talking about being transgender and your gender identity, it really has to do with what you feel you identify as and kind of your own thoughts about.
Because I've heard terms like drag queen, transgender, transsexual, and I didn't know if it was all the same, but just different terminologies. or are they or like, so like is like a drag queen still a transgender? They just call themselves, I'm not, you know what I mean? I don't want to be asking a stupid question, but I want to ask the question so I don't,
Yeah,
I don't encounter anyone in a, you know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to be disrespectful, so sometimes I don't know. So if you don't know, I think it's better to ask. So
And that's the thing, we're in this space to learn, and so there's no such thing as a stupid question.
Because I want to, you know what I'm saying, I want to be fair, and I want to be, you know what I'm saying, I want to know, so I try, that's why I'm here to learn too.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So when I encounter, you know what I'm saying, my family, my friends or whatever, you know, I don't want to be insensitive or say something that I think I know and I don't know.
Right. Yeah. All right, so I'll just tackle parts of your question. So when we talk about a drag queen, that's referring to like kind of the art form of drag. So it can be just for a performance, it can be just, you know, a part of their job or something that they do for a living. Or it could also be a part of their identity. So that's just up to that individual person. But drag inherently is not transgender. So there are two different things, but there can be some overlap. And then I also wanted to mention the term transsexual. That term isn't on this list, but I think, you know, that we brought it up, it's important to discuss it. So transsexual is a word used at the beginning kind of when people were discussing being transgender and like what it means. We were kind of still like discovering what terms to use. So transsexual was mostly used like, I would say back in the 80s or 90s, honestly.
Well, I'm old.
But it was a term that was describing specifically medical transition. So when we say like transsexual, it's having to do with biological sex, right? And so that term was typically used for trans people who had undergone hormones or surgery to describe, you know, their bodies in a medical category. So that term is still used nowadays, but it is not, it's kind of frowned upon in general. So that has once again to do with kind of how you identify individually. So some people may be comfortable with using the term transsexual to describe themselves or others, but just in general, the you know, commonly accepted term is transgender at this point. So I'm glad that, you know, I did want to mention also that this is a safe space. I want to cultivate a space of openness and just being open with each other and being able to like teach each other in these moments, because we all can learn a lot from each other. So it's not just me that y'all want to learn from, it's all of us together. So this is, think of this as a collaboration. So feel free to, you know, speak up if you have any questions. If you don't understand something, we can go through it together and learn. All right, so let's move on to the next term, which is cisgender. So cisgender is a person who identifies with the gender and sex that they were assigned at birth. So you can think of cisgender as just the opposite of transgender. So if you don't identify as transgender, then you would be cisgender. So yes. The next term is biological sex. So this kind of has to do with a little bit with what I was mentioning before. So biological sex is a medical term which describes a certain combination of chromosomes, external and internal sex organs, secondary sex characteristics, and hormonal balances. So this is a lot, so let's break it down. So when we talk about biological sex, we typically think of two categories of male and female. And those categories come with a certain combination of these things that are on this list. So when we think of chromosomes, we think of XX as female, and we think of XY as male. And when we think of hormone balances, we think, oh, if you have mostly testosterone, then you're a man. If you have mostly estrogen, you're a woman. Things like that. And so we categorize them into these binary groups. So I just wanted to mention, when it comes to biological sex, that there is no such thing as a real binary. We have kind of groupings, but it's more so that people fall along a spectrum of possibilities. Because when we're born, it's not that we're born like a certain way and that's it, because there's not just simply two groups. There's always going to be some like interplay in between. And so it's very much a spectrum where we can kind of fall along any point along that. And it depends on like a variety of any of these things. Like chromosomes, there's not just XX and XY, there's other types of chromosomes that you may have. You may not have a primary hormone, you might have a mix of a bunch of them. You might have different secondary sex characteristics, different sex organs, and so on. So I just wanted to mention that it's not so binary as we typically think of. All right, so let's get the next one we've already done. So let's talk about intersex. So once again, intersex is an adjective. So we would talk about an intersex person, not an intersex. And this term is for people with a combination of, once again, chromosomes, sex organs, secondary sex characteristics, or hormonal imbalances that cannot be categorized as neither male nor female. So that has more so to do with what I'm talking about when it comes to the binariness of biological sex. So we typically think of biological sex as that binary, but the existence of intersex people kind of spits in the face of that. Because now we have people that cannot be so easily categorized into one or the other. And so we cannot just discount a very large portion of the population. It's actually estimated that there are about the same number of intersex people as there are redheads, natural redheads. So that is a large portion of the population, even though they are a smaller percentage. That doesn't mean that we want to completely overwrite those experiences. And so we have to kind of change the way that we think about biological sex.
No question.
Of course.
Is the intersex what they would call like hermaphrodite?
Yes.
Okay.
So instead of that term hermaphrodite, that was what was used previously.
I know.
Right. So the proper term instead of hermaphrodite would be intersex. All right. So moving on, we have gender identity. So gender identity is one's internal sense of being male, female, both, neither, or another gender. So with this, we kind of see the variety of options that we have, right? So it's not just, you have to pick either pink or blue. We have a vast array of buffet options, just like all that food on that table. We have lots of options, so you can pick whatever one you like. And you can take more than one thing on your plate as well. And it's the same thing with gender. So if you don't like one category, you can always switch out, see how you like other options. And it's never something that you have to feel to conform. I feel like so many times we think that because society wants us to be a certain way, or society only teaches us about one or two ways, that's all there is. But I'm here to tell y'all that's not the case, and there's lots of people that identify outside of the binary. All right, and so we kind of talked about this a little bit, but the gender binary, a system of viewing gender as consisting solely of two opposing categories called male and female, in which no other possibilities for gender or anatomy are believed to exist. So when we talk about kind of our society and the context that we're all living in, the gender binary is very much alive and well. Think about just even media that you've seen, like movies and TV shows. Everything is very binary. You won't even hear a mention of someone who's androgynous or someone who is genderqueer or any other identity. We only hear about male and female. And so I just want to mention that this isn't something that's just inherent to us. It has to do with our cultural context. Because gender is something that's very cultural. So in other countries, there are other genders besides male and female. And we do also now, I feel, we're moving towards a model where we are inclusive of more gender identities. For example, some states have included an X gender marker on your ID, for example. So that's just an example of how we do have their gender categories as well. But for the most part, I would say we're still kind of stuck in this gender binary. So the next term is non-binary. Once again, it is an adjective. So it's an umbrella term for people who identify outside of the gender binary. So people who are non-binary could once again be under that trans umbrella, but non-binary itself is another umbrella. So you can see how complicated it starts to get. But so the reason it is an umbrella term is because once again, not every non-binary person will identify the same way. So if I identify as non-binary, but you can see I like to dress more feminine, I have a more feminine gender expression, for example, someone else who's non-binary might not be like that. And so they might think of their gender as something completely different. So one thing that I do want to mention is how unique our gender identity is to us. Not everyone thinks of being a woman in the same way. Some women like to dress up and put on their heels and perfume, and other women like to just wear combat boots and a leather jacket. And those are all parts of the spectrum of gender expression. So we all have kind of a different conception of what it means to be our own gender. And so that can also include other gender categories besides just male or female. So if there's one thing that you take out of this whole list of being non-binary or transgender, it's just that we have so many options that are open and available to us, and there's no category that you must conform to, even if it's a label like non-binary, because sometimes it can feel restricting when you identify as non-binary and you feel like, oh well, I must be androgynous then because I can't be neither male nor female. But that can feel also restricting if you feel like you can't dress up the way you want to just because you need to fit a certain label. So it's, at the end of the day, if these labels make you feel good about yourself and your identity, that's great, and of course we encourage you to use it, but don't feel like this is like a Bible that you must like fulfill.
So what's androgynous? Because I always thought it was like dreamy, like, like different, like, I don't know, but I didn't think it was part of, so what's androgynous?
Sure. So androgyny actually comes from two Greek words. So it comes from the Greek word for male, which is andro, and then gyne, which is feminine, like female. So it's kind of a mix of masculine and feminine. So you can think of it as like gender neutral. That's kind of a term for it. So it's basically just like anything that's mixing male or female, or like in between male and female. All right, we're getting down here now. So the next term is sexual orientation. So this term is a term which describes a person's sexual attraction to others. So basically, a lot of the other terms on this list had to do with gender, but this is a term that has more to do with your sexual attraction. So while gender is something, it's a self-concept, something that you think about yourself, your sexual orientation is how you relate to other people. So even though like they might be linked, the two are not the same. So you can be transgender and be attracted to any sex other than yourself or the same sex or what have you. So once again, you have that buffet of options available. All right, and then the next one is transitioning. So transitioning is the process of aligning one's external gender expression, your body, or your legal status with your internal gender identity. So I've heard the term transgendering as a verb, but that is not, once again, that's not correct grammar. So the proper term is to transition. That's the verb. So this is basically when you feel there's an incongruence between how I feel inside and how I'm relating to other people, how other people are viewing me. And so to get that more in line, you can choose options of transitioning. So there's medical transition with your body, hormones or surgeries. There's social transition where you might change your name, you might change pronouns, the way that other people speak to you. And there's legal transition. So there's your gender marker on your ID, your name. So all these things are part of transitioning. All right, and the final term is gender dysphoria. So this is a condition where a person experiences discomfort or distress because of a conflict between their gender identity and their current gender expression, body, or more. So gender dysphoria is just a term to describe kind of that uncomfortable feeling that you get where you might feel like there is an incongruence. And so there's many different ways that you can kind of treat or address that gender dysphoria, and transitioning is one of them. But there are many other ways, just kind of anything that makes you feel more comfortable and kind of takes away this distress, I encourage. And I also wanted to mention, it's not on this list, but I think it's an interesting contrast. We have gender dysphoria, which is that uncomfortability, but there's also gender euphoria. And gender euphoria is actually the happiness that you get when you are properly gendered and you do feel like your gender identity is in line with how others are seeing you. And so I just do want to mention, it's not only, like some people ask like, oh, well, how can I be trans if I don't feel this gender dysphoria? It could be because you feel the euphoria when you are gendered properly, and other people do recognize like your true identity, and you realize, wow, that felt amazing. Like maybe I should go down this rabbit hole and see like what I can find. Like, do I like it when I wear certain clothes? Do I like it when I wear makeup? Like anything. So that's also an option. It's not just, you know, feelings of dysphoria that can lead you to transition. It could also be gender euphoria. All right, and I think that's it for turns. Whew. All right, y'all. So what did we think? It was definitely a lot of information, but definitely also important. Next up, we have our goddess of the day. Today's goddess of the day is Amana. She is a goddess of the Kalina people from the northern coast of South America. In Kalina tradition, Amana was a creator goddess who has no beginning or end. She's endless. She has the tail of a mermaid and is associated with water and ocean creatures, even being said to have surfed the Milky Way on a giant turtle. In one of her myths, she created the sun, but didn't realize that it would burn out the moon. Therefore, she enlisted the help of her twin sons, named Tamusi and Tamula, to help with her daily battle against the sun, explaining the split between dark and light. This inspiring goddess begs the question, what can you create today? Bye, goddesses.